Hi, welcome back to Happy Apple Core Homestead. Today we're going to talk about how to get slugs out of your garden. I'm going to tell you lots of different ways you can approach this, and then I'm going to wrap it all up with what I personally do in my garden. Slugs like dark, moist areas in your garden where they have quick access to their food supply, which is also your food supply. A couple of tips before we get into all of the different actionable things is to keep your garden groomed. So if you have potted plants or you have raised beds, you're going to want to make sure that there's not a ton of grass growing up all along those edges. That gives them a lot of protection and it kind of stays dark and moist in there. And they can also get underneath your the boards of your beds. I have seen slugs in there before too. So what is the best time of day to find your slugs? The best time of day to find your slugs is going to be any time of the day after it rains or while it's raining, or early in the morning when the dew is still on the ground, or late at night when the dew is starting to appear on the ground. Also, you might notice them coming out when you're watering your garden, and that's whether or not you're watering by hand with a hose or a watering can, or if you have drip irrigation like I do. My drip irrigation is very close to the soil line, but at times some of the water can, kind of creep out a little bit. Don't worry, I'm not overwatering or anything, but sometimes the water can creep out a little bit along the edges of those raised beds, and slugs will definitely be in that area during watering time. And so with that said, sometimes the best time to water, even if you are doing drip irrigation, is at nighttime. Now let's do a rundown of most of the ways to get rid of slugs in your garden. Make sure you stay tuned to the end because I'm actually going to take you on a little adventure out to my garden, and we're going to talk about my personal method. Or not my method, I don't own it. It's my favorite method. It's the one I use. We're going to start with beer traps, pros and cons. So what is a beer trap? How do you do it? And what are the pros and cons? I'm going to answer those questions for you. Beer trap is a cup or some kind of a vessel that is filled up with beer and placed in your garden. Usually you're going to want to maybe put it in your garden bed and squish it down a little bit so that there's a little bit of a lip, not flush with the ground, but it helps if it's in the dirt a little bit. It just makes it easy for them to get in, but hard for other critters to just like accidentally fall in. What kind of beer do you use? The cheapest beer you can find. Stale beer, expired beer, the cheapest beer you can find. So this method isn't free. That is a con. The pro to the beer trap is it's easy to do and it will trap small slugs. What happens is the yeast in the beer attracts the slugs, they come in, and the little ones are going to fall in and drown, but the big ones are just going to take a sip, have a good time, and be on their merry way. And one of two things is going to happen to those larger slugs. They're either going to get alcohol poisoning and die, or they're gonna have a good time and be back later. And the little slugs, they drown. So if you're looking for a no-kill method, the beer traps are not gonna be for you. Because the slugs are attracted to the yeast, you could also use yeast and water as opposed to beer. That's probably even more expensive than beer, but if you had some yeast laying around that was for bread or winemaking and it's way expired and you don't think it's going to activate, you could use that. It's a good way to repurpose that. Next up is Sluggo. The main ingredient in Sluggo is iron phosphate. Sluggo is OMRI rated, so it is considered to be safe for use in your organic garden. It's not going to hurt you or your pets or your plants, but it is going to greatly hurt the slugs. So if you are compassionate about the pests in your garden, you might want to think twice about this one. What happens when a slug eats Sluggo is it gobbles it up because it is attracted to it and it tastes good, and it stops feeding, which means your slugs are going to basically starve to death very slowly over the course of a week. That sounds awful to me. While I have used Sluggo in the past, I honestly did not delve into what actually, got rid of the slugs about Sluggo. It's not like Eggshells, which we're going to talk about next. It's actually torturous for the poor slugs. I guess no hiding my opinion, right? I'm not going to judge you if you use it. I promise I've used it. I still have some in my garage. I just don't use it anymore. And on to eggshells. Eggshells, crushed, you can put them around your plant. Slugs do not like to cross that spiky barrier. And so if you have access to thousands and thousands of eggs, you can crush them up and put them around every single plant. It's not something you can just scatter in the garden beds and think it's going to work. You need quite a bit of it in a thick layer around each plant, and it's easily displaced by things like birds. They're curious and they want to nibble on them. They will displace them all over, and also rain is going to displace those eggshells. If you only have a plant or two, I think eggshells is a good option. It's a good way to repurpose the shells that you're using in your kitchen. Next up, salt. I don't know if you're like me and when you were a little kid and you saw a slug outside and your parents were like, here, put some salt on it, see what happens. Yeah, that's a true story. It's gross, but interesting. If you put salt on a slug, they will bubble up and basically dissolve. That also sounds torturous to the slug. I've never heard a slug cry, but I can imagine it's very painful. The salt thing is only going to work if you actually pour salt onto the actual slug. Assuming that the slug is in your garden bed, continuous use of pouring salt into your garden is only going to make your soil sterile, and you won't be able to plant again unless you remove that dirt and put new dirt in. Salt is not good in large quantities in your garden bed or in anything that you want to grow, flowers, plants, grass, anything like that. I did an experiment one year and I bought a ton of salt, and I took it and I sprinkled it around the outside perimeter of my garden because I'm thinking, well, they're coming from the outside in and maybe they'll slide across it and they'll all bubble up and die, and I don't care if the grass around my garden died because we're always having to weed eat it anyway. Needless to say, no slugs cared about that, and the grass didn't die, and I just wasted all my money. Okay, next up on the list is bramble sticks. If you're like me, you've maybe got some blackberries on your property and you're trimming those down, probably this time of year. You can cut those, and let's say you have a plant here, and you will put 4 bramble sticks around each plant and then put 4 more on top of that. So you want to double up your bramble sticks. And again, this has to be done around every plant or every group of plants. This is very cost effective. It's a good way to use up your bramble sticks before they end up in the compost later. The only thing that might be not as good about the bramble sticks is sometimes the thorns are far apart, and if the slug can get over or under in between those thorns, they will. Not intimidated by that at all. They'd have to go over the spike to actually decide that that wasn't a good idea for them. And of course, you would have to remove them every time you wanted to get in there and do any weeding. There's a possibility you might also poke yourself if you're using that method. Okay, we're in the home stretch, guys. I only have 2 more main ones to talk to you about before we head out to the garden, so hang with me. These are all important, different ideas that you can choose from in your garden. Next up is oyster shells and seashells. Depending on where you live, you might have access to a huge number of really nice, heavy oyster shells or shells. So maybe you know somebody in the clamming industry or in the restaurant industry where you could kind of collect a large number of those heavy shells and crush them up. And you can use those in your garden. It's a much more, if you can get them for free, much more cost effective than using eggshells. They are heavier, so they do not get displaced as much by the birds and the rain. And they also, like I said, if you have a huge quantity, make a beautiful pathway through your garden, having a crushed shell pathway. I've seen some and they're absolutely stunning. You might not want to walk barefoot through your own path though. And last in this series, before we move on, are nematodes. Nematodes are good for small to medium-sized slugs, but they can actually hurt your plants and they can remain in the soil for quite some time. For them to be effective, they do have to be reapplied pretty often, and they can be expensive. So, just some words of caution there, but they are effective for those little tiny slugs. Now to the method that I use. I call it Slug Patrol, and I do it every day. So I'm going to take you out to the garden and do a slug patrol with you so you can see exactly what that looks like and how it works, and then we will meet back here. The first thing you're going to need is a bucket and a pair of gloves. I promise you are definitely going to want those gloves. And then we're gonna go all through this garden and we're gonna find every single one of these guys. And don't forget those guys. You want to take special care to check along the outside of all of your garden beds, even down to the ground level. Another tricky place they like to hide is at the bottom of the peas. This one right here is going for it. You're going to want to look on top of your plants as well. Make sure to scan all of your grassy areas because guaranteed you're going to find one in transit. And if you see anything like that, definitely make sure you get those, because they are doing the hanky-panky and gonna make more slugs in your garden. Make sure to pull back any vegetation that's growing along the sides of your garden beds, because this is where they like to hide. Keep a close eye on your bucket because you're definitely gonna get some escapees. Boink. In areas here where you have a lot of vegetation, you're going to want to lift it up and take a peek underneath, because you might have a destructive little friend under there. Oh my goodness, you guys, look at that guy. Look how cute. This is my finger. You can see how small he is. And he is going in the bucket too. But I'll put him down gently so I don't break his shell. Over here we've got quite a few on my peas. Not very happy about that. There's like one, hold on. 1, 2, and 3, just right in this one little spot. Oh goodness, I'm having a hard time getting him. Got him. So that's number 3. And number 4. Let's see if there's any more. This seems to be a hot spot. They're digging this, but see how much damage they're doing? See the brown here? Lots of destruction. I'll have to keep an eye out on this area. This is my anise hyssop, and I have a very serious intruder here. Not just one, but 2. These guys can decimate your garden very, very quickly. not a bad haul, you guys. Lots and lots of slugs, some snails. That one's on the move. These guys are trying to escape. Alright, now it's time to go find a place for these to live that is not in my garden. I like to go to a place out in the woods that is away from my garden to dump my slugs. And I just take my bucket and dump it out. Woo, there they go. They're not hurt, don't worry. Give it a little pat. And that's it. Oh, look at this slug. That one's cool. Look how pretty. Then the bucket goes back up to the garden for the next Slug Patrol. Okay, so what did you guys think? What did you think of the Slug Patrol? Tell me all your thoughts. I know that there are pros and cons to every single method that I brought up. No judgment which one you pick, but if you pick 1, 2, or 3 of these options, I think you're gonna get your slug and snail population down to almost 0, or at least manageable so that they're not completely destroying your garden. If I went through all of these a little bit too fast, head on down to the description. I'll have all the methods that I talked about. I'll list out the pros and cons in an easy to see list, and then you can make a decision for yourself which one you want to do. All right, you guys, I've got some things to do outside, so I'm going to run away for now, but I will be seeing you very soon. Bye!